Tools are builders' friends, and like friends, they should be valued and cared for, and any new acquisition undertaken with discretion. For this reason, we present this list of suggestions not as a rigid rule or fixed standard, but as a reference from an old acquaintance. I am well aware that your old friends are not to be abandoned, and I would never suggest this. I'm presenting this list only as a means of widening your circle of acquaintance. For those who are new to log building, this is more of an introduction. We can organize tools under their class of application, and for convenience I've listed them under measuring and marking, the tools for placing and holding, tools for cutting and shaping, and in addition we have another category for power tools and for equipment and supplies. I will list the tools for measuring and marking first because tape measure is probably one of the first tools you will need, and also the one that will be used maybe the most frequently throughout the project. The next group, tools for placing and holding, are tools for just that, to put logs on the building and to hold them there and to keep them from moving. The largest group will be tools for cutting and shaping. These are tools to cut the log to length, to peel the log, to cut the notches and grooves, and to do any of the other shaping or smoothing that is required on the material. You will be adding an ever-lengthening list to your toolbox as time and finance permit. But in the meantime, the ones shown here will be very, very adequate, and now let's get on with measuring and marking. Have at least two tape measures. One, a carpenter's tape that is 25 feet, or better still 33 feet long, and two, a longer tape, 50 feet or 100 feet. Long tapes can be obtained in a variety of styles. They can be a cloth tape, as this one is, or a steel tape. The steel tape can be easily broken if it is bent too sharply. Two long tapes can be used to speed up the layout of a building. Calipers are not essential, but can be very handy to help determine the diameter of a log. These can be made if your supplier does not carry them. You can also use two flexible squares for this. They're not quite as handy, but they can do the job well. Some small steel pins like the ones shown are very useful to hold squares or tape measures in place. They can take the place of an extra person when he is busy. They can hold a square here on the end of the log while you go to the other end to place a chalk line, for instance. The most essential tool is a pair of scribers. These are so important to the overall success of your project that you should obtain the very best available. Shown are Starrett number 85 and number 92 dividers with level bubbles attached and the Mackie scriber. Many builders bend the tips of the Starrett up so that the points are more closely at a right angle to the log. If you do this, you may require two pair so that the points on the second pair can be set closer together. The level bubbles of the Mackie scribers are visible from the sides and bottom, and the points are adjustable. You would therefore, if you keep them in good condition, need only one pair. Use your carpenter's level and position a level board. This board is plumb from two directions so that you can get a reference line to set up your scribers and to check them at regular intervals. If possible, obtain 3 or 4 ordinary levels, ranging in size from a small torpedo level to include 2-foot, 4-foot, and 6-foot ones. An infrared level is very suitable if you can afford one. A dumpy transit level or a carpenter's transit level is very useful for setup, but if your budget will not allow this, they can be rented for the occasion.
Great. Mark it there or what? Yeah.
Get a good chalk line. You will need it often, and a cheap one will probably wear out. For places where more accuracy is required, use an ink line. These are available, and with the proper care they are extremely useful and accurate. Here you see the ink line in use. The square is pinned upright to the end of the log, so you can see the exact line of your cut. As a matter of fact, we very rarely use a chalk line anymore. These ink lines are very handy and give you a thinner, more accurate line. The reason you may need to use a powdered chalk line is when the weather is very cold or the logs are very dirty, and the ink line would not print. Have a supply of indelible pencils. It is not necessary that they become regular casualties. As a matter of fact, a pencil can last quite a while. Have carpenter's pencils, and an ordinary soft lead pencil can be useful when you need an accurate line. Kahle chalk is useful to mark locations. Tools to place logs are most often thought of as a crane of some description. There are a great variety of these possible. A medium-sized truck-mounted hydraulic crane is of course ideal, but if you plan to build only one house, this may be a little expensive. Older equipment can be reasonable, and then there is the possibility of passing the equipment on to the next builder when you are finished. A tower crane setup is suited only for a building yard, but the older dragline cranes are often inexpensive and reliable, but make sure that it is safe. A gin pole setup is all right if you are mechanically inclined, or it may be possible to get a lift from the friend with the self-loading truck who delivered the logs in the first place. The self-loading truck does not have a great long reach, but if your building is accessible and you can get around it, they will work quite well. Another option may be to use a more exciting front-end loader. Along with this first power source, you will need a pair of loading tongs or a grapple to move the logs with. Otherwise, the tools for placing and holding are not too extensive. Peavies, log dogs, come-alongs will do for the most part. Buy or make a heavy wooden maul. Get several peavies and of different lengths. There is no such thing as having too many. If you have a short-handled one to use up on the building, it is more convenient. Use the larger ones on the ground, especially if you are dealing with heavy or crooked logs. Not exactly like this person is doing, that is a little bit dangerous. Better to pull on a peavie, that way you should not hurt your back. There are two indispensable types of log dogs, rolling dogs and drive dogs. These will probably have to be made. The rolling dog can be used in three positions. 1. To roll the log in place. 2. To prevent the log from rolling. And 3, to allow the log to slide but not roll. These are all useful functions on the building or on the skids. A drive dog is intended to hold the log in place under most conditions. These also will most likely have to be made, but their success is very dependent on the size, shape, and weight. Get a good sample for a pattern, and you should have at least 6 of these. You can make these adjustable blocks, but use them with care. They are used to hold the unsupported end of a short log, but use drive dogs for more security also. There are several types of come-along available. The cable type shown next is suitable. These have too many uses to enumerate, but where moving, adjusting, and securing heavy material is a large part of the operation, they have a prominent place. A heavy wooden mallet can be made from a round of log end or a better piece of hardwood. You'll find that it is in use every day. Other equipment that you can make and that you should have on the site is a selection of wedges and some portable stands or blocks to support logs while they are being cut. Tools for cutting and shaping are the most extensive group, and again, this is assumed to be the exclusive domain of a gasoline-powered chainsaw. So we will look at these first. There are, however, many other cutting tools to consider. If you are to use only one saw, get a medium-sized of 50 or 70 cubic centimeters displacement with a narrow bar 18 to 20 inches long, a low-profile chain, and a chain brake. The make of saw is the builder's choice, but most often that choice will be Husqvarna, Stihl, or Jonsered. A useful accessory for the saw will be a saw guide. There are several of these on the market. Electric tools are used extensively, although each of these has a hand-driven counterpart. A round bottom plane will speed up the log work, particularly the smoothing of the scarp. This work can, of course, be done with hand tools. I would suggest that you get good, heavy-duty industrial tools. Most light-duty consumer products do not survive very long in this environment and are a doubtful investment. There are a great variety of such tools on the market. The following examples shown would be adequate for most projects. Every builder should have at least one good axe in his toolbox. If you are a dedicated axeman, you will probably have several. The ox head is a good light axe and with a short handle, most useful for general work. A heavy axe for chopping might be an Arvika or a high test. The weight would be from 3.5 to 5.5 pounds or 1.5 to 2.5 kilograms. A broad axe is a less common item and its function has been largely taken over by the chainsaw. But if you are a dedicated axeman, this tool is a lot of fun to use. An adze is another item that requires practice to use well. It could be a useful item if you are prepared to develop the required skill. Obtain several kinds of chisels, all of which will be heavier than any ordinary carpenter's tool. These can be both framing chisels and carpenter's chisels. A set of heavy framing chisels can be obtained from any good supply house, and if they have a long handle, so much the better. Look for a scoring chisel with a slight curve. Not a lot of curve. A number 1 is good, and it should be about 1½ inches wide. Every builder should have a good slick for flat work, and it should go without saying that you will need maintenance equipment to keep these tools in top shape. A peeling spud may be required for some logs, although I would rather avoid it, because it causes muscle strain. In preference, I would use a heavy draw knife for the same application. A gouge knife looks like a draw knife, but it is used to trim a groove and is optional, as is the crosscut saw. The tools for the care and maintenance of a chainsaw are fairly simple. You should have a grease gun and a bar wrench, a round file of the correct size, and a flat raker file. How you use these is another matter. If you are just starting, here are two types of filing guides that will help. The first is an adjustable guide that you would use periodically to true up the teeth. The second one is for more general use. The raker file should not have teeth on its edge, in case it hits the sawtooth accidentally. The bar wrench is used for the removal and adjustment of the chain, and also doubles as a spark plug wrench. A portable clamp will help hold the saw for sharpening, especially if you're out in the woods. It can be used and placed in a stump. In order to mix gasoline properly, you should have two containers, or if your usage is heavy, have several storage containers. Mix oil and gasoline could more properly be listed under supplies, but use the very best mix oil and mix it with the gasoline properly according to the manufacturer's direction. For mixing and pouring the gas and oil, a funnel would be useful. A portable chain brake tool would be used if you buy your chain in bulk rolls. If the saw is properly maintained and adjusted, it is unlikely that you would need it for repairs. It is, however, a good idea to have a spare chain along and to swap them around each day. On rare occasions, you may also need a spare spark plug and a spare starter rope. An electric blower or gasoline-powered blower can be used to clean up the saw as well as the logs. Have a good strong toolbox for maintenance tools and another for the regular mechanical tools. We will keep these separate because everyone knows that the more time spent with the maintenance tools, the less time will be spent with the repair tool. High pressure water will do an excellent job of cleaning up a log that has been rough peeled with a spud or draw knife. If the logs have been subjected to a lot of mechanical damage in their production, it may not be an effective way to peel the logs. In order to maintain edge tools, you should have a bench grinder. You already have an angle grinder, and you will need a variety of stones to complete the list. The water stones do the best job, and these might be in 3 grits, 800, 1200, and 2000. Ladders like PVs are always in short supply or at the other end of the lot. Obtain several and of different lengths. Scaffolding is an option. If you are doing a large project, it might be desirable. For the most part, builders use ladders for scribing and remove the logs for cutting. If your work is well planned and carried out, there will be little need for scaffolding until you reach the finishing stage. Personal tools and equipment will be a good tool belt. Hard hat with ear protection and face protection, and as for the face protection, I would prefer a screen to the plastic visor. A bucker's apron is for leg protection. For the most part, I discourage the use of gloves unless the weather is very cold. Also, important to your project will be a supply of scaffold planks and a few nails. Now, when your carefully chosen and gently handled set of building logs have been delivered, you should be ready to start applying your pent-up energy to the building project. Terms used in log building are, as near as possible, the same as used in any construction. How the term is applied will be a little different in some cases. Foundations are permanent or temporary and may be one of any number of styles. This is a temporary building foundation from which the house will eventually be moved. Nevertheless, it is set up very accurately. Sill logs are the bottom or first logs on a building. Most often 3/4 sill logs and half sill logs. This is not always the case, but it has been adopted as an industry standard. Because of this, the foundation can also be a standard structure. Here we have half sill logs and 3/4 sill logs on a temporary building foundation. Now the project is a little more advanced. The stumps are in place, as are the half logs and the 3/4 log sills. Center lines are used everywhere. This generally means the center of the wall and the center of the foundation. The building is dimensioned from the center of the wall or from the center of the foundation. These lines are set up accurately on the temporary foundation so that they will match with the permanent foundation later on. Anchor bolts are used to bolt the sill logs to the foundation. A through bolt will be extending all the way through the wall from the top to the bottom and is placed after the building walls are complete. Sill seal can be a fiberglass material, or better yet, a tar-soaked foam pad. The drip break is a shallow cut on the underside of the sill logs. It's used to prevent water creeping in between the logs and the foundation. A wall log is any full-length log with 2 notches cut in it. The actual length is not defined. A log with only 1 or perhaps no notches is referred to as a short log. The header log goes across the tops of the doors and windows. These should all be about the same height, and preferably the flat would be cut a little less than halfway through the log. The plate log is the last log to go on the wall and will often have the roof pitch cut onto it. An outrigger log is a plate log that is located outside the center line of the wall. A beam is a log or timber that supports structure above it, generally floor joists. The cap log is the final log to go on the end wall, and will most often tie the two plates together, as well as covering the upper floor joists or beams. A keyway is a slot cut into the ends of the logs at windows and door openings, generally the size to accept a 2x4 key piece. A great variety of notches have been developed. The 6 that are shown here will be sufficient for most undertakings. A practice notch is an exercise in cutting saddle notches and is designed for the beginning builder. It will progress through the initial scarf to a first scribe and a first or location notch. Scriber relief, then a final scribe, scoring, and the final notch. This is a short form of the whole process. Here we are doing the first scribe. Cutting the first notch. Cutting scriber relief, and the log is again put in place for a final scribe. Now we are doing a final scribe. Cut the final notch. Finish the edge, and the log is put down in a final location. A saddle notch is the most common wall notch and is designed to fit onto a scarfed seat. These notches are being cut with a plug cut, which is the professional way to cut this notch. A round notch is scribed to fit over a round log in its natural state. A lock notch is the same as a saddle notch, except that it has a web of wood left in the center. It is used to prevent a log moving to the side or to reinforce a notch that would otherwise be cut too deeply. A square notch is a lapped notch. They are mostly used for beam and roof construction. A blind dovetail is used to join sill logs and other applications where the wall log is not to show through on the other side. A dovetail notch is an alternative way of joining logs or timbers, and it is a very reliable and stable kind of notching. A blind wall notch is most often used on interior walls. Grooves are the lengthways cut in the logs to make them fit closely together. They are primarily designed to form with a chainsaw, but they can be fashioned with hand tools also. A U-groove is generally used on log ends, but some builders shape the entire log to this profile. A W-groove is the most common type of groove, and the relief cut in the top is placed there to prevent or limit checking. A deep V groove is rarely used anymore, and I don't even have a sample of its production. A locking groove is used where there is a need to retain sealant and the exact location of the log. The Z-groove is used to lock upper logs in place, most often for the last 1 or 2 rounds. It takes skill and practice to be able to handle logs well, but there are not too many terms required. Roll means to spin or revolve the log toward you or away from you, to rotate the log sideways. Cut means to saw across the grain, and rip means to use the saw in a direction parallel to the grain. pinch is to draw the log towards yourself without rolling it. Pry means to shift the log away from you without rolling it. Brushing with a chainsaw is to reduce high spots on the intended flat surface and generally improve the alignment of the work. Scribing is the act of using a pair of scribers to draw a cut line on the log, and the scribed line is the resultant mark. Scoring is the action of cutting the grain of the wood to prevent fraying, and thereby obtaining a more accurate cut. The scarf is a flattened portion on the side or the tangent of a log to accept the next notch. Relief cuts are placed to minimize checking, most often on the top of the log, and wedges can be used to help localize checking to this location. A plumb line is a vertical line on the log or timber. A level line is a horizontal line. Wedges are triangular pieces of wood used for all kinds of occasions and functions. A post and purlin roof is a popular, simple, and strong roof support system, and consists of a ridge and purlins held up by vertical posts. A post and purlin roof system lends itself to framing the gable ends, either solidly or with glass or some openings. Common rafters are the smaller rafters that are placed on top of purlins. These can be dimensional lumber or pole rafters. Sheathing is the material placed on top of the rafters to support the roofing. It can be spaced or it can be solid and closed. Shingles and shakes are types of wood roofing. Any good roofing material is suitable for a log house. Venting is a good idea. It is a channel placed between the rafters to prevent the insulation inhibiting the ventilation. Insulation is the material placed between the rafters, generally fiberglass. Next comes a plastic vapor barrier, and finally a ceiling material applied to complete the roof system. Log trusses are another way to support a double-framed roof system. There are a number of styles to choose from: pin post truss, collar tie truss, hammer beam truss, and there are many designs within these styles. We have not covered all the terms and tools that you might encounter, but I feel these are the most important, and with them